Are there any creature comforts you've been relying on lately to sort of take your mind off of our chaotic world? A game, an album, a video, or a movie you can just play and watch over and over to zone out and calm down? My go to is sitcoms from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. The ones I watch over and over are Sanford and Son, Good Times, 227, and Martin. I've watched Sanford and Son and Martin so much, I can recite dialogue for an entire episode. Out of all those shows, 227 is the one that makes me feel the best when I watch it. I've started watching it again lately, and what I've realized this go round is this show in particular feels like a quilt. When I watch 227, it feels like I'm being wrapped inside a quilt. And I think that's why I go back to it repeatedly. I don't assume all of you are familiar with the TV show 227 for a variety of reasons, generationally, geographically, or culturally. So here's a little bit of background. 227 was a sitcom that aired for 5 years, from 1985 to 1990. The show was about a group of neighbors who lived in an apartment building set in Washington, D.C. It starred Marla Gibbs, who had just come off the successful sitcom The Jeffersons, which had 11 seasons and ran from the mid 1970s through the mid 1980s. On The Jeffersons, Miss Gibbs played a housekeeper named Florence Johnston, who had a very contentious relationship with her boss, George Jefferson. Their traded insults are what today we would call capping. They would cap on each other. These moments were often the highlight of episodes of The Jeffersons. A similar dynamic could be seen some 20 years later in the 90s between Martin and Pam on the sitcom Martin. 227 was originally a stage play by Christine Houston. Ms. Gibbs played Mary Jenkins, and Hal Williams played her husband, Lester Jenkins. Mr. Williams' most noted roles up to that point were Officer Smitty on Sanford and Son and Sergeant Ross on Private Benjamin. 227 also gave us future Oscar winner Regina King. She played Mary and Lester's daughter, Brenda Jenkins. Years later, there was a full circle moment on the cop drama series Southland. Regina King played a detective who had to ask a senior citizen, played by Marla Gibbs, some questions about a case. Miss Gibbs' character showed early signs of dementia. So when she opened the door and saw Regina King, she said, "Brenda." It was an adorable and humorous moment and a great callback to the character that catapulted Regina King's career on a show led by Miss Gibbs. Rounding out the stellar cast of 227 was Helen Martin, who played Pearl Shea, Elena Reed Hall, who played Rose Holloway, Curtis Baldwin as Calvin Dobbs, who was also Pearl Shea's grandson, and the show-stopping Jackée Harry, who played Sandra Club. That's how she was introduced to my life, but there's a whole lot of you who knew her as Tia Landry's mom, Lisa Landry, on the 90s sitcom Sister Sister. In Christine Houston's original 227 stage play, Lester runs off with Sandra, but that did not happen on the sitcom. This is the first example of how 227 was a quilt. The main cast and the generations of actors who made appearances on the show. One thing 227 did not do that a lot of Black cast shows did during the 80s and 90s, there were no first season white characters. A Different World had Marissa Tomei during the first season. Martin had John Grease, who played Sean. Although Sean was on for more than one season, his character disappeared after Martin stopped working at the radio station. Even the Jamie Foxx show had a first season white character who, after a while, didn't even have lines. I do not understand the purpose of such casting. Was it just to get white viewers? It was pointless because these kinds of characters did not have memorable roles and didn't add anything to the show. However, white actors like Fran Drescher, Rita Wilson, Leslie Nielsen, Kelsey Grammer, and Charlotte Rae did have memorable one-time roles. 227 did add a white character in season 4, played by a pretty popular comedian at the time, Barry Sobel. But he played Brenda's history teacher who moved into 227. So that was a relevant character. He would later get a roommate played by Stoney Jackson, cousin to the Jacksons, and perfecter of the long, drip-tastic Jerry curl. But revered actors like Bea Richards and Whitman Mayo were recurring characters that were welcome faces and got large applause from the studio audience. Supermodels Iman and Tookie Smith had memorable roles. Morris Day played a prince in one episode, which I thought was a cute pun. Child phenom performers like Countess Vaughn and Tasha Scott were on 227 as well. Countess Vaughn was fresh off her Star Search win when she played Alexandria, a 10-year-old college student. She then went on to play Kim Parker on Moesha and the Parkers. Tasha Scott gave us the memorable Cookie Time performance in the movie Troop Beverly Hills, one of my favorites from my adolescence. She would also go on to star on South Central and The Parenthood. Nia Long had a non-speaking role on 227, and a year after that show ended, she co-starred with Regina King in Boys in the Hood. Miss Gibbs also brought back most of the characters from the Jeffersons to appear in full episodes of 227. My favorite was when Roxy Roker played Mary Jenkins' high school friend, who'd gone on to have major success as an author. The rapport between the two of them was so genuine. Then there were the behind the scenes folk who contributed to this glorious sitcom. People like Adela Farmer, who did the wardrobe for 227, but also did the wardrobe for the last season of Good Times. Here's another patch for the quilt. It was on Good Times that she mentored Michelle R. Cole, who went on to do award-winning wardrobe for Blackish. Other notable names, director Garen Keith, whose name you see several times on Martin, Vita Spears and Sarah Finney Johnson, who wrote and produced for The Parkers, Moesha, The Game, and Family Matters. There was a character named Manny, who was a friend of Brenda and Calvin's. He and his parents moved into 227. His father was Mexican and his mother was Puerto Rican. The identifier Latino was used for them. And I think that was the first time I'd ever heard that term used, especially on television. But there were also some problematic things I picked up on. Like I noticed a few transphobic and homophobic jokes. And the episode where Lester and Beyonce's future stepfather, Richard Lawson, bought a Japanese restaurant was riddled with bad Asian stereotypes. My parents and I watched 227 because my household was a watch everything Black people are on household. It's not that 227 was top notch as far as production. Sometimes you could see the boom mic in a shot, which is hilarious. But I chalk that up to the inexperience of whoever was holding the boom. Sort of like watching the first Dolomite movie, and you can see the boom mic in almost every scene. Still, it just speaks to Ms. Gibbs giving opportunities to folk to get their foot in the door in Hollywood. The most memorable character with the most memorable lines was Sandra Clark. Jackie Harry won, I think, 2 Emmys for that role. Very well deserved. Miss Harry was flawless as Sandra. For the 5 years 227 was on, my family and I moved multiple times across 3 states. So, like a quilt, the show was a reliable comfort during a period of constant upheaval. Watching it now also makes me think of a time when so many people in my life that I've lost were still alive. Not just people who were in my life personally, but even characters on the show. So many have passed away. I can just snuggle up to back episodes that don't give me anxiety or leave me with hopelessness. Instead, I can see the start of so many wonderful artists' careers and think about where they are now. Even Angela Bassett, who on one episode of 227 played a desperate mother. 227 is also an example of how Ms. Gibbs used this show to give so many people an opportunity that turned into countless opportunities for generations to come. I don't know that we'd have shows like Moesha or The Parkers, The Game, or even Blackish if 227 hadn't been a university of sorts for the characters of these shows that would come out after 227 wasn't on the air anymore. A Different World often gets the bulk of the credit for that, but 227 came before A Different World and should be held in the same high regard.